So my name's Stephen Goldstein. I've been in insurance for about 12 years. I've been mostly on the carrier side, mostly in sales. Got into InsurTech last year. Moved back to LA from overseas. Met Gilad, and I've been working with him and just kind of talking about how we can grow this InsurTech LA and SoCal scene. Gilad has sent his apologies that he couldn't make it today. He had a family member pass away last week, and he had to fly out to Israel to be with the family. So he sends his apologies. He'll definitely be here next time. So this is not about me. This is about our guests tonight. We have Mariel Devesa. She's the global head of business development for Finn. She'll talk a little bit about that later. She has a very interesting background. She spent 10 years with Farmers Insurance, and before that a few non-insurance related roles, which I'll let her talk about. The format of this, if you guys have been here before, it's pretty much just a question answer. We want to keep it casual. I've got a few questions that I've written down in advance. As Mariel's talking, as we're talking, if there's any questions that you guys have, I'll probably stop about like maybe 20 minutes in, and you guys can ask questions. And then we'll have another kind of Q&A towards the end as well. But again, we're going to keep it casual. It's a summer day in Southern California, so we should be enjoying ourselves too. So now I'll look at you instead of them. Yeah, it'd be great to just have you start with sharing your background and how you've got from where you started to where you are now.
Yes, that's a long path. So
we've got an hour, so please go ahead.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. So I hope it's going to be an entertaining evening at the very least. But we'll be sharing some insights from both from the insurance side and then from the startup side, and then everything kind of in the middle. But thanks so much for Stephen for filling in, and for Gilad. I have met Gilad at Farmers, so that's how we kind of know each other. And so thanks for Carbon 5 for hosting as well. So my path is not the normal standard insurance one. I'm a local from LA. I'm originally from Argentina, but I grew up here, and then I started as a CPA through Deloitte, and so that's my initial background. And then I worked for Red Bull, both in the U.S. and then also in Austria. And then in Austria, I did transfer of best practices globally. And then I came back and then did some work in a couple of different consumer goods industries. In real estate, I grew up in real estate, so my family was very entrepreneurial, and that was the background that I grew up in. So I've always enjoyed that. So it's nice coming back to that. And then I joined Farmers 10 years ago. I started in sales and forecasting for the U.S. business, and then we had a big acquisition, $2 billion acquisition from 21st Century. So I was on that team to merge the two companies. And then with that, we also, so 21st Century is a direct-to-consumer carrier, and then Farmers is an exclusive agent carrier. And so merging the two, we created new revenue streams, and that became a big part of new business for Farmers, and it was very successful. And then from there, then I was tapped to be the chief of staff to the CEO. So I did that for a few years, and then it was saying, hey, there's so much that's happening in the innovation space. What are we going to be doing as a carrier? So many who are here, how many others that I didn't meet are in insurance or in a carrier? Yeah, so many of you know, it's, many carriers are 80 plus 100 years old. So there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of legacy systems. There's a lot of cultural change. And so to get something to be innovative and think about the new and think about the future requires some real dedication. And so it was saying we need to start something here. And so then I started that department 4 years ago, and then this past, so I stayed at Farmers for 10 years, and then this past June I had moved to Finn, which is a startup based here in LA. We do intelligent water management, and while I was at Farmers, we've launched several things which we'll get into, but one of those is in the connected home space, and I really had looked at a lot of different carriers, water being one of the biggest perils of loss, and the technology that Finn had was really just blew me away as far as what was there today and what was going to come in the future, not only from a point of mitigating loss on the water side and reducing losses, potential losses, but also from the consumer side of how we could help consumers learn about water, and then the mission of saving water, and it's a depleting resource. So those things really were very interesting to me, as well as the people that work there. Really great. So love the mission, love the people, and I'm really excited. I joined in June. So exciting things to come.
Cool, thank you. It's quite a background. So tonight's topic, I forgot to mention, is insights on innovation. So as Mariel mentioned, we're going to start first talking about more of how carriers go about innovation. Then we'll talk about how that differs a little bit from startups, and then we'll kind of go in the mishmash in the middle. So maybe you could share with us when, 4 years ago, when farmers decided, okay, we need to get into innovation. Like, where do you start? How do you, what do you do when that sort of mandate is given?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very broad category. And when you say innovation, you could go in 50 different routes. And how many have had the shiny ball syndrome, where someone says, oh, we need to go do that, go over there. And then 4 weeks later, it's like, no, because we need to go over there. We need to go focus over there. And so it's not a shortage of ideas. It's not a shortage of great concepts, but it is, you have to start somewhere. So for us, it was in saying, okay, where's our biggest book of business? It's auto and home. What are the areas that are changing the most? How do we affect it and get a win? And one of the first things that we looked at, and this ties back to the session that was last week, or the last one, which was on the regulatory side, is Uber. So Farmers was the first mainstream carrier to launch a product for rideshare. And you would think, oh, that makes so much sense, right? Like today, so it makes so much sense. But if we think about this was in 2014, so 4 years ago. Uber was not so mainstream. And at that time, if you think about it, there was an article every other day about something horrible that was happening at Uber, right? The fights between the regulatory, fights from the municipal level to the state level to the lobbying to like things that the CEO was saying that people, who remembers those days? Was anyone involved in auto in those days? Yeah, great times, wasn't it? Yeah.
Have those days ended?
Yes, and so
Transfer to scooters.
yes, but it's very similar. So what happened is, so as an example, there was a coalition that was set up between insurers and then the TNCs, the transportation network companies, and then some other parties that were involved. And so when we got I was like, we need to get on this. And it was like, so I got us on that. And then immediately after, it was like, what have you done? That's terrible. We shouldn't be talking to them. They're bad people. We need to be not doing this. And the position from our company, from the company at the time, as well as insurers in the industry, we will shut them down. They're a small little startup. They're going to go away. They're nothing. We're a big company. We're going to shut them all down. We're not going to let this pass. And so there was fighting all the time. And the regulators needed to solve something because the rideshare companies were moving forward. They were getting to the point that we were almost going to have laws by each municipality. Can you really imagine? We didn't have the infrastructure to do something at the municipal level. That would have been a nightmare. And we were fighting law at each state. We were winning some, we were losing some, but it was going to be a very expensive battle. And I said, well, let's talk about it. And within the company, again, you had these factions. The reason why we went after it is because the CEO, he tried Uber, and he liked it. And he said, we should solve for this. And then it was saying, we should learn about what the information is. What is it? Because everyone had an idea. It's terrible drivers. They have horrible records. They drive a lot. There's too many miles, etc. It was like, is that really the case? Why don't we look at the data? Because the data will tell us what the case is and how do we price for it. So we did that, and we built a really great relationship with Uber. And they were a fantastic partner to work with, and we developed a product with them. And I remember it very well, we were having all of these fights, and I was chatting with Gus Foldner, who was the head of insurance at the time. He's still at the company. He's a brilliant guy. And it was like, Gus, so we're fighting, you guys are fighting, we kind of want the same thing. Should we work together? And it was like, yes. And let's understand, what do you want, what do we want? And what happened there is we had to build trust. Right? From their side, they're saying, how is a legacy company going to work with a company, a disruptor? They're not going to play fair. And from the legacy side, it was saying, oh, these are like wild cowboys. Who knows? They're going to like turn around and not do the deal. And so we had to build that trust, but we did, and that's what's now called the compromise language, which is now what has been passed in most states throughout the US. That happened in a few months. And then by the end of the year, we had more than, I think, 18 states that had passed the law that clarified what was a product that we could build and how we could get it filed and approved. And that's now, so we were the first mainstream carrier to do it. And it's now taught in schools about how legacy companies and disruptors can work together. And with that, it shifts mindset. So from being a legacy company that has over 80 years of history, it was in saying, oh no, we don't want to be first. Why would we want to be first? And it's in saying, why would we not want to be first? If we can create a differentiation, if we can do something that can get in front. And when we did that and we launched it, then the agents were like, this is fantastic. No one else has this product. We can sell it. We've got all this share. This is so great. What's the next product? And so it's about shifting these mindsets of saying from, we don't do this, we don't lead, we follow. How do you get these small wins that then start shifting mindsets of saying, we can lead, we can be first, we can do something differentiated, we can do something different. What's the next one? And I think that's a big win.
Yeah, and so let's maybe jump into that a little bit more. So that's kind of the what needed to be done. Maybe you can share with us the how. So you talked there was fighting at the beginning, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Fists were being thrown, people were kicking each other. What was, can you maybe just walk us through what were some of those, I guess, fights? How did they get resolved? How did you guys build that trust? What were some of the things that you needed to do to make sure that actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, leadership is so needed. So executive sponsorship, because without that, when you're creating something net new, and especially, depending on what your innovation teams look like, when we started, it was lean. It was like 2 of us, right? And so you're going 2 people against a big organization. And what does that mean? You have to get buy-in on resources. Not only on the money side, right? But it's on resources of people. You need product managers, you need infrastructure, you need IT, you need the whole company to get on board. And how do you do that? It's about showing the bigger picture. It's about getting the buy-in. It's about getting that executive leadership that says we will do this, and then getting the business to understand why it's important. And it's always anything that is net new is scary, right? And we had many of the same people, and sometimes it will be your project management team. You need different people from different parts of the company, from distribution to operations to marketing to sales and service, and sometimes it would just say, well, X has extra time, so he's on your team. And you'd be like, okay. And then X would sit in the team and say, I've just been put on this team, but I don't believe in it, and I don't really want to do it. And you'd say, that's awesome. Yay. Right? And then you would work with them and really understand what the main motivation, why that attitude was there. And what most of the time it would be is it was fear. It was a fear about failing. It was a fear about how that was going to look, how was it going to affect. But in those many instances, that same person, because it's so vivid, is then we sat with him and talked about it and why it was working, what his main problems were with it, and in the end, he was the biggest cheerleader for the program. He's like, this is a great program, why it's great, this is how he helped. He led the work into the distribution, into the field support. And that's what you need. It's trying to understand. You're going to get some naysayers and some people who buy in. Really strengthen those leaders, and then sometimes you can't change the naysayers, but how do you get them more towards your side? That's been quite helpful. But again, it's begging and pleading and saying, hey, let's get this done. And as you start getting those small wins, really celebrating the small wins, and then moving forward. And also, don't be afraid of changing the system, of changing the process. Like many times traditionally it was, okay, business will go and design what the plan is, then that will be handed to IT. And then IT looks at it and interprets the business requirements slightly differently, and then it goes back to the business. And this takes a long cycle. The normal cycle was 9 months, 9 to 12 months. That's a long ways on things that are changing so quickly. And so what we said is, well, we don't have that luxury. We need to launch in 4 months. It can't be done. It can't be done for 15,000 reasons. We can't do it. We've tried it. Doesn't work. Doesn't do this. Great, we have 4 months. Let's sit together, business, IT, all the different parties that were involved, say, what do we need to do? We need to do things concurrently. The IT team is the one that knows, the business team is the one that can design, but how do we make it work? It's not that we're going to business, this also happens, business designs something and then IT interprets it exactly as the business wants it. It's never been done and it costs 90% more than some other solution that IT has, but wasn't asked for specifically. What we did is we gave them that opportunity to share those ideas so that we could streamline the process and gave them the ability to say, this is what we're generally thinking. What do you have? Because so you tell us what's going to work and what's going to work better. And that empowered people to have a voice and to share and to design it, and they all felt part of it. And then it was a really, everyone who worked on that project, really proud of it. And when we launched follow-up projects, we got the cream of the crop because people were really excited about working on a new program, not on something, people get excited about working on existing programs, but when it's something that launches new, that hasn't been done before, that you're really kind of stressing your brain to conceptualize something that's new. How do you solve for that? That was really exciting, and people, the same thing happened when we did our telematics offering, when we did, as we looked into connected home, it just continued to grow, and each one of those just built on the innovation platform.
Now I'm
curious on the specific Uber example. I asked Uber drivers in 2014 about their insurance, and it was scary as a person driving in the back of their seat that they had no idea what insurance was, let alone the question on their original application that says, do you drive people commercially? If so, you're excluded from this. Did you have any trouble getting their buy-in, or was that something Uber did? Did you have to do education specific to the consumer?
Absolutely, every day. Because what happened initially, right? When it was the wild, wild west, what was happening?
They all thought they were covered under Uber.
TNC said, all of them, right? It was Uber, it was Lyft, it was Sidecar, it was all the ones that were there. They were like, it's covered. Because technically, was it not? It was gray, right? It wasn't defined in the policy. The exclusions weren't there. And so it's about looking at a new disruption that happens and saying, how does that implicate insurance? Because it never existed, so it was never contemplated in the original policy. So then the language was never there to define what that was. And so it's in saying, okay, first we need to create those exclusions, right? In order to have a new endorsement. And so then you're going through that, and for a period of time, some carriers had it, some carriers didn't. And then when they started to understand that, well, you're incurring this increased risk, but you're not pricing for it, so it's better for you to exclude it. Great, so you handle the insurance side. Check. Then you got the other side. TNCs were saying, it's part of your insurance, don't worry about it, it's part of it. You had all these drivers that got signed up, and they had their conversation with insurance at that point. It's included as far as all they know. And even today, when you get into a car and you say, hi, Uber driver, how are you? So, tell me about how insurance works in the car. I'm covered. I have $1 million coverage. Not exactly. Did you know about how the law changed? What law? You say, oh, well, did you know there's different periods of time? What do you mean? Right? And so, there's different periods of time. So period 1 is when you turn the app on until they accept a ride. And so then that's at that point that they have the minimum liability coverage from the TNC carrier, which includes generally it's $50,000, $100,000, but they don't have uninsured motorists, they don't have medical, they don't have comprehensive. And then when they hit accept the ride and they're en route to get someone, that's period 2. And period 3 is when they have a driver in the car, a passenger in the car. And so periods 2 and 3 is when they have their full commercial coverage of $1 million. But if you ask any driver, the majority don't know. So it is very much about education. So we did a lot of work with the drivers. We did a lot of work with in educating even people who were writing articles. They were getting things wrong. And even at conferences, there were people who were standing up who didn't understand the true law. And we're like, no, there's no coverage, and it's really scary, and you should fear for your life, and the drivers are at massive risk. Not exactly. So they always had coverage. They just didn't. They may not have had the coverage that they originally had. And so for us, it's also, as we're working through like new companies, what is it that we want to do? We worked really well with Uber and in building that relationship. And what was important for them is that it was their goal. What is their goal? To get more drivers. What is our goal? Insurance. What does not meet? If an insurance carrier says, hey, you're gonna be a driver for a rideshare company, did you know the massive risk that you had? Did you know that you're not covered? Did you know that you're gonna have like this kind of liability? What happens then? Those drivers get scared and they don't sign up. And so for us, it was to be very clear as to they always had coverage. It was just options, additional options that we were providing so that they could understand and make an educated decision as far as what kind of insurance they would want. But good question.